What's good, YT family? It's your brother ELI coming you another 9OZ video. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Cam Newton, Superman, Cam. Let me talk to you real quick, doggy. Now, I'm not going to go about this how everybody else is going about this. You calling you a hater and saying that you're bitter and saying that, I'm saying, like you're just banging on Hurts because Hurts is more accomplished than you. Even though I do believe there's some truths to all of those things, I'm not going to come about it in this way. What I'm more disappointed in you, my boy, is the fact that I see a lot of similarities in how they treat Jalen Hurts and how the media and the NFL treated you when you first got into the league. Or not when you first got into the league, but when you were in the prime of your years. I remember what the people were talking about you. And they were saying that, you were a dual threat quarterback, and being that quarterback is, let's just be honest, it's a white throwing, passing, pass first league. And it's always been a position that is mainly geared towards passing. Obviously, it being like one of the main job descriptions. You didn't do that at a very high rate, right? You didn't do that especially at the rate of your peers, your contemporaries. The Peyton Mannings, the Drew Breeses, the Tom Brady's. Who else was around at that time? Phillip Rivers was around at that time, slinging the pill. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers. So you had a lot of gunslingers around his time, around Cam Newton's time. And Cam was one of the first to be so dynamic to the point at the quarterback position, being how tall he is, how big he is, and moving that fast, right? Cam was just dynamic. And that was one of the biggest stigmas with Cam, that he was incapable of winning the way how they wanted, or the league wanted a QB to win. Now, was Cam winning? Of course, we already seen it. One of the best seasons you could ever see a quarterback have as an individual have. Cam Newton had it, but he didn't win. And even when he did win in games, right? When he did, win games that season, people were knocking him for the same reason why they're knocking Jalen Hurts on how he's winning, right? But the problem is, obviously, Jalen Hurts is not as dynamic as Cam Newton. I'm not saying that. But the problem I have with Cam is that, being that you see how the media has destroyed you, and rightfully so, with that Super Bowl performance that you had, and not, people constantly speak on that situation of you not jumping on a fumble and all the stuff like that. And obviously, you just got to live with that. But putting that to the side, seeing what the media was doing to you, I thought that you were smart enough and wise enough that you would pet, be a little bit more understanding with Hurt's situation and who he is as a quarterback. Being that you kind of have the same, I'm not trying to say like you guys are the same build, but you have the same intangibles to where you're good, or I can say you're great at everything. You're not really amazing at one thing. Like I don't think Jalen Hurts is amazing at throwing the football. I think he's exceptional. I think he's good. I think he's great at times, right? It's just same thing with Cam. Cam Newton wasn't a slouch when it came to throwing the ball. It's just that wasn't his attributes. That wasn't who Cam Newton was. That wasn't who Cam was a guy who imagine if the read option, imagine if Cam Newton had the offense that Lamar Jackson has, where it's a lot of motion offense, it's a lot of read options, and then obviously he had a running back so dynamic like Derrick Henry. Oh my God, he would be unstoppable. And kind of the same thing with Hurts. Imagine if he had a Saquon Barkley. I know he had Christian McCaffrey, but Christian McCaffrey, I digress from that. I ain't even gonna get into that. He's just not my cup of tea when it comes to running backs. But yeah, man, I felt disappointed that Cam went about it in that way. And is it hate? Probably, could be, right? But also, I think it's especially in black athletes, they're always being taught to pin us against each other, even if it's unwarranted, right? Just like with this, Clarissa Shields and Layla Ali, something I really don't like. I really don't feel like they have to fight each other because it requires one of them to lose, and it's just unnecessary. But like I said, I don't want to make it that kind of video. I'll probably make a separate video for that. But yeah, man, Cam, that's the only thing I'm disappointed in you with, bro. Is you acting like you wasn't the same kind of guy. People wasn't talking crazy about you in the same way. You know what I mean? Obviously, Jalen Hurts just won. That's the only thing that's really truly different between you two. Is that Jalen Hurts won and you didn't. Multiple times. Jalen Hurts has been to the Super Bowl twice. You went to the Super Bowl and lost and never was again. So I felt like that's the only thing I'm just really disappointed in with you. And I feel like, you know what I mean, you're better than that. And I kind of think you're really trolling. I think you're really trolling. I think it's just, a lot of guys is doing that today. They're just talking. They're just woofing. They really don't feel that way. They just know what gets clicks. But yeah, man, like, comment, subscribe, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do y'all think Cam was bugging out, or you think it was warranted what he was saying about Jalen Hurts? I disagree, but hey, man, I'm open for the discussion. Holla at me later. Peace.